رسوله الكريم أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome back, brothers, sisters, viewers of IQRA TV, with me Yusuf Akoudi on this show of Real Talk. Once again, Real Talk, it's about real issues, real people and real things that matter to me, you and everybody else. Again, it's real time as well, so we're live, we're in the Bradford studio, so do call in if you wish to have your say on today's topic. Today's topic again, join with me, I say again, Sir Iqbal Bana, Iqbal Bana, OBE.
Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
DL, more importantly, we can't forget that. And joining us, should I say, is former Lord Mayor of Bradford, Ghazanfar Khalik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. How are you, sir? Are you well?
Yeah, fine. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining us and thank you for coming on Real Talk. We'll be talking about politics, we'll be talking about real issues, more importantly local as well as national and international issues and politics, and how we can be part of it, play a very important role, and what we need to do in the times and challenges and forever changing circumstances for us, especially as Muslims and BME communities. Obviously, Brother Iqbal Bana has got a wealth of experience in terms of advising 6 former Home Secretaries, as well as being the DL Deputy Lieutenant for the Queen, and various other bodies including race and hate crime. And our former Lord Mayor of Bradford, over nearly 40 years of experience in politics, 30 years, nearly 30 years as a local councillor, has done being the Deputy Lord Mayor as well as the Lord Mayor of Bradford in 2001 and 2. So let's get cracking in terms of our conversation today. We were having a preamble and a discussion as we always do, and some of the things more disturbing and alarming, some research, some the KC review we were talking about that's been taking place, some issues that have been highlighted in the KC review about Bradford, as well as the Northern Powerhouse we were talking about, some of the Ofsted inspections and statements that are coming out in BME and predominantly Muslim schools, and then generally faith schools in specific. There was an item today, well, by and Ghazanfar Bhai, that you know, faith schools are going against the British, often going against British values. And some of the stuff coming out in the KC review is sort of highlighting similar sort of stuff. So I'll ask you, the expert, Iqbal Bhai, first to have your say, and then we'll ask the expert to give us some answers to the analysis you put us.
Assalamu alaikum to the viewers. I'm sure your viewers must probably want a break from me after 3 weeks of being here, and I tried to get away today. But yeah, and thank you for the invitation again. And it's really nice to meet an old friend of mine, not that old, he looks quite young, an old friend of mine whom I've known for many years as well, and served as a wonderful Lord Mayor of this amazing city of Bradford for a whole term. I mean, obviously, as you say, the Muslim community in this country is going through a very challenging times, as we all know. We have seen that from all around us, there are attacks on Muslims for no reason in some cases, you know, simply for being Muslims. I mean, 2 weeks ago, there was this issue about young girls wearing hijabs in school, you know, and the chief inspector questioned the reason why. Last week I was interviewed by the BBC about a school in Stoke-on-Trent where they didn't have any toilet paper in the toilets, you know, and they saw that as a major issue, and they got the school was given was down-marked as a consequence of that. Now obviously, you know, there's no defense for not having toilet paper, but their defense was that, you know, as Muslims we have different cleaning and hygiene methods as opposed to the other communities. And then there's, as I say, the KC review that came out last year had painted a very bleak picture of Bradford, and particularly the Pakistani community of Bradford, and where they've fitted in the wider society and the fabric of society, and what role, you know, particularly women had in that area. There's issues around, you know, Muslim communities integrating or not integrating, this notion about, you know, Muslimness, Islamic, what is Islamic values in British value terms, you know, where does Islam fit into that? So there's a number of issues. The prevent agenda, for example,
yes,
which is having a major impact on our communities as well. And all this is having, you know, some issues of that politicians are having to deal with on a regular basis, you know, as part of their work. So I think, yeah, there is a reasonable debate that we can have. criminal justice systems, how that affects the community, and we've discussed this in the last couple of weeks as well.
Yes, yes.
And there's issues of criminal behavior within, crime and disorder within our communities as well. And what we need to look at is, where are the role models? Now people like Gazanfar are role models for a lot of people. Then we have business communities as well. And one of the negatives that the case review picked up, which they fundamentally failed to address, is the contribution that the Muslim community of Bradford and surrounding areas, and around the rest of the country as well, that they make to the economy of this country. And that is something that has been missed out. And if you look at some of the businesses, I mentioned Regal PLC Foods Limited. You probably Yunus Chaudhry sir, for example. I mentioned IQRA. Some of these companies are huge companies who employ hundreds of people, and they're putting millions of pounds into the economy. But Casey completely missed that out. So there are some untruths being told out there that we now need to bust.
Okay, wow, what an opener. And Gazanfar Saab, as a politician and I would say a nurtured and well versed person, how do you tackle these issues locally first and foremost? For instance, some of the issues that Iqbal Bhai has raised in the KC review, and some of the things that are attached with Bradford and the North generally, and how do we then sell this to our communities? What should we do? What's the answers to that?
Assalamu alaikum to your viewers, and thank you very much for the invitations. It was nice to see Iqbal Saab after a short while. Actually, we haven't seen each other for some time. Iqbal Saab had alluded to some of these very core issues, which our communities, particularly the Muslim communities, are going through, particularly in Bradford and North, and overall in the UK. Let me take you back. Actually, I think some of your viewers may not be aware actually how we actually arrive where we are at this present time. I've been here more or less more than half a century in this country. Out of that half a century, 40 years of my life actually has been actively involved with the community issues and community affairs. And I have seen a lot of changes taking place in Britain, and a lot of changes taking place with particularly our own community as well. The Pakistani community or South Asian community, put it this way, particularly came to the UK back in 60s, late 50s, when the mill was running. There were full employments, and there were the people, they came and they started working in manual jobs. Then in the 70s, the families started arriving, and then you have young children going to the schools, and then obviously the community beginning to settle here more and more. And late 70s, actually, when the decline of the textile industry, we're back into a different scenario. Particularly coming back to Bradford, Bradford always has a negative publicity, negative image being portrayed by media all the time. Not just now. If I go back 40 years, every time there has to be a story and about an immigrants, a negative story is always highlighted from Bradford. Bradford always have suffered because of the negative publicity. But Bradford also have a positive achievements actually. Bradford was the first city actually which introduced halal food halal meat into the schools. Bradford was the first city actually to have the first Asian Muslim Lord Mayor. So Bradford also have a positive story to play as well. Bradford was the city actually was at this moment, a lot of people from Muslim communities are very successful businessmen. But they also have to accept actually there are some very, very serious core issues in Bradford. There's, I put it, sometime I'll give a background to people. I'll give them background in two scenarios. One is the particularly scenario, political scenario is from 9/11. and then after 9/11. Unfortunately, unfortunately, I was the Lord Mayor of the city actually when the 9/11 happened. Now, I was almost halfway through when the 9/11 happened as the Lord Mayor. So I have actually had first-hand experience of seeing how the shift has taken place. Before, when I used to go to various events and the way I was received, and after 9/11, and after the riots which took place, it also took place in my term of office as well. So that actually was the killer as far as the Muslim community was concerned in Bradford, because that actually was those two events are the core event actually where they have actually divided the community into different camps.
Wow.
Okay.
So we can blame him for everything.
No, just give you a bit
No,
of
it is a valid and very important point you're raising. Two significant, massive events for Bradford and then the national and international community.
Well, 9/11 obviously was a huge change, as Ghaznafer says. It changed a lot of things, and well, you see, I mean, Ghaznafer has described them as the riots in Bradford. I call them civil disturbances. Because the Oldham, Bradford, and Burnley, there was Bob. The three areas went up in civil disturbance in that time, and then we had Ted Cantrell come and do a report. We had Herman Ousley come and do a report, and they came up with all sorts of things. But I mean, if you look at Bradford as a council, as a local authority, as a public organisation, we have lots of Muslim councillors and Asian councillors in the structure. Right, and one of the questions I've asked for a number of years, and I asked this I think 4 weeks ago, because the Prime Minister, when I went to the Home Office 3 weeks ago, we were discussing this. The Prime Minister commissioned a report, which is the diversity audit, which is saying, let's see where in the public sector organisations are members of the BME South Asian community and African Caribbean community. And particularly, one of the concerns for Bradford has been that while Bradford has got a lot of young people and middle-aged people working in the organisation below certain grades, when you look at the top tiers of management in Bradford, for the size of the city it is, for the size of population that we have, I'm afraid to say, we should be ashamed of ourselves that none of the directors or assistant directors or senior are from the BME community at the moment. And that has been the trend for a number of years. And the question is, when you see young people do not see access to these type of jobs.
But then that question I would ask, and as a young person or a Bradfordian.
I'm not blaming
you. No. I'm more than happy to accept that actually.
Our constituents and our wherever you are, whether it's in Bradford, Sheffield, Huddersfield, or anywhere up north, and we're making it a northern thing because of the northern power thing we were talking about earlier on. But however, with anybody anywhere, whether it's south or north, you'd go to your councillors, you'd go to your local MPs, and what are you as councillors doing to manage this situation in the local authority?
I think there are two issues here. I totally agree with Iqbal Saab actually with their assessment. Actually, there isn't anybody from BNE community actually on the assistant director level. One of the problems Bradford households have actually, this is I mean, I have raised a number of time after time. Vast majority of the directors actually do not live in Bradford.
Right.
This is one of the problems with the Bradford, and I'm afraid actually that we as a politician hasn't been able to address that. And every time I've raised it a number of times that the first of all that there isn't anybody from the Muslim community. Well, I would say, well, it would be a new community, never mind the Muslim community and the wider community. And also, the Bradford is the size of 500,000 people, for 500,000 people, we can't find a director actually who's willing to live in Bradford. Vast majority of the people, the directors, they live outside of Bradford.
That is not a criteria for employment
No. I think because that is one of the issues, because if you don't have any stake in the community, then you are not committed. Because if you have a stake actually in the community, actually, then you are committed. Because this is the historical problem with Bradford, and also another problem with Bradford is unique in a sense actually. Whenever there nationally, when there is a conservative administration down in London, locally it's Labour. but when nationally it's a Labour in power, locally it's Tory or Lib Dems in power. You know, so that is it's one of the issues. You know, that we need to.
But surely,
the question that I have asked, and I've asked Gazanfar and some of his other colleagues in the past as well, is that for a city of the size of Bradford, with the population of the black and minority ethnic community it has, right, that all these years we have not managed to find. And when we have managed to find, we had one young Muslim lady who was in, I think, assistant director position, Salina Ullah, right, and she unfortunately also found it difficult to maintain that position there. Why is it that we cannot seem to be able to get people from our community to accept to come into these jobs? And don't tell me that it's not possible, because I can prove to you.
I would ask the other. I would bat on the other side, or let me be the devil's advocate here, in terms of asking you as councillors and advisors to the powers that be in Whitehall, that hold on, we are applying, we are getting people with relevant credentials, qualifications, but we're not given that opportunity. So they feel, and I've heard this many a time, that it's the local authority, or whether it's the NHS, whether it's the police, West Yorkshire Police, or whatever it is, they say they feel unfairly treated, or it's institutionally racist. I'm sorry to say this, but this is what you get, or feedback you get. Now, what would you say to those young people who are frustrating the anger?
I think with any institutions, there is going to be an element of racism. We can't deny that, and I think if anybody is denying that, actually live in a cuckoo land. But I think the essence is that nobody will give you a plate. You have to struggle. You have to fight for it. You have to be as good, even better than the people you're competing with, in order for you to be successful.
I've just been told. I'm sorry to cut you short. I've just been told this is similar. We're talking about local authority. I mean, whether it's any police force, I'm not going to mention the area or region, but somebody's just mentioned to me that, you know, unfortunately, these are the hurdles they're facing in terms of an uphill battle, trying to get it into the ranks higher up in terms of the police.
But can I just say, I mean, Gazanfar raises a point here. Not far from here is a local authority, which has 1.2% of a BME population.
Okay.
Right? Compare that to the Bradford population. 1.2%. The local authority had 13 senior managers, okay, chief officers and deputy chief officers, 13. Out of that 13, 3 were black or Asian, okay, in that local authority. So the question is, how can a local authority which has a 1.2% population of BME, right, has 3 chief officer grade people in their organization compared to some of the other networks? So what that shows is that where you have structures in place, and that local authority doesn't have a single Asian councillor, right? So what that shows is that where there are policies and procedures, and you have people who are committed to doing the right thing in place, that things can happen, right? And that's one of the issues. I mean, I'm saying the councillors, in my view, I'm being honest, I think the councillors have got a responsibility, the former councillors or existing councillors. And even that situation hasn't changed in Bradford or Kirklees or Leeds for that matter.
We've got a caller waiting before we go to the break. Let's see what the caller has to say first, and then we'll go for our phone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Yes, what would you like to say?
What topic were you discussing?
All right, okay. I think we're talking about politics here. All right, okay. I think we've lost the call. Sorry,
we lost the call.
He's lost the call.
It's a pity.
So anyway, before we go off to the short break that we're going to go to and then come back, I'm going to ask Gazanfar Sahab to say a few words on his role and challenges as a councillor, and what's changed and what should we be doing now as councillors, if what the councillors should be doing right now. I mean, well, fair enough, 70s, 80s, 90s, uphill battle, issues of overt discrimination and issues of all sorts as a new and first or second generation community. Now it's moved on. You're talking, 20 years on, 30 years on. What would you advise the local councillors right now?
Well, my advice to the current politician, the local councillors or the MPs, is that obviously that you will have to face up to the challenges, and you have to be able to represent the communities. And I think but my message to the new councillors and the current councillors and even the member of parliament is that you will have to stand up and fight for the communities. Okay, nobody will give you anything on the plate. Okay, there are serious core issues, and I think we'll discuss those issues after the debate, after the
break. Yes, indeed, we're going for a break. So these issues we'll talk after the break in terms of what we need to set our targets on, and wider in terms of the Ofsted and the KC review. Stay with us. Back with you after a short break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.